Hi, I'm Dustin and I'm the creator of Rapid Rig. In this tutorial video, I'm pretty excited about it because it's a whole new feature, different UI overhaul for being able to select your controls of your rig once you've built it. So just going over how to lay out the buttons in your UI so you can easily go in and start selecting these things and doing some cool stuff for selecting and mirroring poses and all that good stuff with your own custom picker laid out to your character. So hopefully you enjoy this video. So let's get started with laying out our controls for our selector for this rig. I will mention that this is still in beta and there's probably be some little bugs along the way, but I think it's a big improvement from the RRM2, which was just kind of a grid. So the first thing we're going to do here is fire up the selector right here. And what this will do is take a snapshot of your controls and create buttons based on the sort of Z axis of your scene to populate this UI with all the buttons of, or all the controls of your rig as buttons. And I can go in and now I can drag on these to select the ones I'd like to. And obviously this layout there's a lot of overlap here. The buttons are quite large. The image might need to be a bit bigger. So we can start tuning all this to fit it better to our rig. So I'm going to do this kind of quick just to, you know, show some of the tools, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on really laying it out perfectly, but just to give you an idea of how to do this for your own rigs. So the first thing you want to do is set the rig kind of to the pose you want to have the snapshot taken in. So wherever you pose the rig, you can retake the snapshot. And for example, uh, depending on what your rig is, you may want to change the whole orientation of the rig. So if you were to orient it, say like this, and I'm just going to reload the UI here, right? It's going to do that based on this sort of front view there. And obviously that's not suitable for this rig, but if you're doing like quadruped, you could extend the arms out or do it like a spider or something. It might be better to actually rotate it like this to do that. So I'm going to put it back like this. And the other thing I'd like to do is have the arms sort of straight out. So I'm going to load up my modular UI here, and I'm going to go to my control settings, and I've created a rest pose that's more of a T pose than an A pose. I'm just going to pop it into that pose there. And I'm going to go ahead and close this because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to reload the UI, and you can see that it ran like that. So I can retake my snapshot and things like this, and we'll go through some of those settings. So for now, we're going to right click in here and we're going to say toggle into edit mode. You can also do it by clicking here. So this will put us in edit buttons. You see you get the red in there just indicating that you're in edit mode. And so the first thing I want to do is update the background image. This is just a temporary one that you can use if you don't have one. And you can either use a render or a screenshot, whatever you want to use. I've taken a couple screenshots of my character here. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to say set background image. And I've put this in my images directory of my project. I recommend putting it somewhere where you're not going to be moving it around because you'll lose the link like you would a texture. So I'm going to choose the main and I'll load that image, and here we go. So there's the, oops, didn't mean to dock that. Let's just pull that off. There we go. And so this has all the buttons here, and you can see that these buttons are offset. So I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to say retake snapshot. And what that will do is refit the buttons to my image here. And I kind of lucked out that these just fit the way my screenshot was to how the buttons lay out with a bit of spacing. Now, I'm noticing that this is quite big, like I accidentally docked it already. So what I can do is resize the background image and maybe make it a bit smaller. Again, depending on your screen resolution and how many monitors you have, you could make it bigger, you could make it smaller, whatever suits you. And I'm going to make it 80% and can also leave this on so it'll actually resize the buttons along with the image at the same time. So we'll resize the image, and there we go. And I could retake my snapshot one more time just to make sure that the buttons are more or less the same. Yeah, slight shift because we're working with pixels here, so it's not going to be perfect. And so now we can start going in and adjusting the layout here. So I'll just talk about some of the key ones. The main one being that you can highlight all the buttons, or as many of them as you want, and you can resize them. So I'm going to make sure I'm in edit mode again, right click, or highlight all, right click, and I'm going to say resize button. And I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. So try like 32 by 32 maybe. Resize. That's a bit better. Maybe I'll make them a little bit smaller. 20 by 28. There we go. It's a little bit smaller. Now it is harder to see the names of them when we do this, but you can hover over them to see the names of them if you like. You can also resize certain ones, but hopefully if you lay them out sort of how your rig is, uh, you'll get familiar with what these buttons are. And so what we can do next is start, bespoke moving and resizing some of these. So for example, I have like all my main control ones here. So I have my main inner, my main offset, and my main. So I'm just going to click and drag these apart. I'm going to highlight these two here and make them a bit bigger because I can't read the names. So I'm going to right click and I'll say resize. I'll just make these ones have a bit bigger width. So I'll put these back, say 40, resize. Let's go a bit bigger, 50. Yeah, that works. And then I can close once I'm happy. And maybe I'll put the main one in the middle, main inner there. And uh, I kind of like to align these up a little bit better. So let's talk about that next. So you can highlight the buttons you want to align and then right click on any of them. And you can align left, right, or vertical centered. So if I do um, that, it would stack them all to left or right. So in this case, I want to do um, a line to the bottom, say, and that will stack them all along the bottom. If I, had them like this and I set to the top, it would align them to whichever one is the highest. So it's going to do that. I'll just drag them all down. And then the other thing I could do is select them all, right click, and I can say average horizontal spacing. So now they'll be evenly spaced out with even gaps between them. All right, so let's look at the hands here. So there's quite a lot of buttons overlapping here. And I'm going to start moving these out. So there's a thumb 3, thumb 2, thumb 1, and then the main thumb 1. So I'm just going to close these like that. And then for the fingers, that's a lot of buttons to try to nicely organize. So what I'm going to do is just drag the pinky 4 down here somewhere. And if you have FK chains with more than 2 joints and 2 chains, you can right click and say layout FK controls as a grid. And I'll just lay these out as horizontal. Okay, and so what it will do is, like, I'll just move this one maybe down a little bit and move this one down, and it will space everything in between the top, like the very first control and the very last control. And I'll lay this out one more time, horizontal chains. So that means by horizontal, it means like the fingers go there. So we have index 1, 2, 3, 4, middle 1, 2, 3, 4. If I did it vertically, do vertical chains. Now it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, running vertically. I'm going to switch it back to horizontal. Okay, and I'll just move this here, and then we have all these little ones for the twists. So there are a lot of these extra little ones hanging around. So I'm just going to quickly move these up, and yeah, so that looks like all the twists. So I'm going to highlight all these, and I'm going to just say align centered horizontal. So now they're all like that. And I can also average their horizontal spacing. Now they're nicely offset like that. And I can go in here and move the micros over and space them as well. Oops, didn't mean to grab the mid. There we go. And then I have here, grab all these, realign them to the left. These, align those shirt to the left as well. Drag them up a little bit and average vertical spacing. I'm going to move the twist ones here down, and there's a lot in the leg too. So we have like the pivots, the IK ones. There's the ball IK, toe IK, heel IK, the other pivot, and then the foot IK, which is like the main one. So I can make this one a little bit bigger if I wanted to. So let's move these over here. I'll resize this one to be 40. One, yeah, I can leave those. Let's try that again. 60. There we go. Close that once I'm happy. And then yeah, I'll just put the toe, ball, and heel together. That. Some more IKs. switch. And then here's my FK. So that's toe, ball, ankle. So I can just sort of put them like that. So however you want to space them. And obviously you don't want to do this for both sides. So what I could do is grab all of these here and I'll right click and I'll say symmetrize and that'll pop the other ones over there. That did move the main inner, so I'll put that back. Could grab these ones here, symmetrize, there we go. And here I have like my root secondary, root parent, cog, pivot, all these ones here. So you could do kind of the same thing. So you can see that things are getting a bit cluttered. Um, and so you can actually hide certain ones if you'd like and then show. So like, let's say I don't want to see these twist ones. I can highlight these and I can say hide button. And I'll just hide them and then I can right click anywhere and I can say show all buttons and that will bring them all back. Or if, let's just show all, and let's say I accidentally hid like the main control. So let's just hide that. So here I'll say hide button, drag over it, there we go, hide it. Okay, and let's say I hid some other ones, but yeah, let's hide some of these twists here, for example. So I'm just gonna hide those as well. Okay, and then if I select this one, I can right click and I can say show selected button, show selected controls buttons, and then that will bring it back. You can also sync it to the scene. So there are lots of like these twist ones and stuff that you may not really care about. So what you could do is say sync button viz to scene, and it will hide all the ones that are not visible currently. So that way it declutters this quite a bit. And you can see like when I'm in IK, my FK controls are hidden. And if I switch to FK, and now I sync again to my scene, now my FK controls come back. And then if I want, I can just go and say show all buttons and everything will pop back again. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, things are getting a bit cluttered, especially in the face area here. So what I can actually do is create multiple tabs. So I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to choose create new tab. However, I want to select the controls first that I want to be in that tab. So I'm going to switch over to select controls. I'm going to grab all this stuff here. And I'm grabbing some extra ones that I don't necessarily need. So now I'm going to go into my scene and just deselect the ones I don't want. Okay, so that should be most of the face. And yeah, so now I'll right click in here and I'll just make sure I'm in edit mode and create new tab. And I'll call this face or head or whatever I want. Create new tab, and then all those controls will come in. And I can do the same thing, resize these, and I can choose another image. So I'll switch to edit mode and I will say set background image. And this time I'm going to load in the face. And I'll load that image in. You can see this one's way too big and now it's blowing out the whole thing. So I can go in here and resize my background image and let's make it say 70%. And I'm not going to adjust the positions to match of these buttons. So I'll just resize. Yeah, that's fairly close. I can make it like a little bit smaller maybe. Do like 95. Yeah, that's pretty close. So now my UI is, kind of maintaining the same general proportions. And I could do the same thing here, retake my snapshot. There we go, and I can start moving these buttons around. Now I'm not gonna spend time on that, but you kind of get the idea. So let's switch back to our main one here. And let's see, what else should we talk about? So we talked about showing and hiding, setting the background images, creating new tabs. So before we go any further with actually now selecting things, let's save this because obviously we don't want to set this up every time we build a rig. So what I'm going to do is in my main tab, I'm going to right click and save rig layout. You have to do this in the main tab. This doesn't exist in the other ones. So right click and we'll say save rig layout. And you can save it to the rig, or you can save it to an external file, or both. So I'm just going to save it to the rig for now, just for the sake of demo. But yeah, you could save to an external file and then load that onto another rig, or this rig if you wanted to send that file along with um, the rig to your animator once you've done rigging it, so they can then put that file somewhere and load it on and so on. So or if you have rigs that are similar, you could actually load in. I right click here, I can load a rig layout, and if the rigs are similar, you wouldn't have to do everything from scratch on the second one. It would kind of get you a good start. So anyway, I'm just going to save it to the rig for now. So save rig layout. And now if I close this and reopen the window, everything's back. So it's all here with my tabs, with my images, all that stuff. So if you quit Maya and restart, it'll be there. It's saved into the rig itself. So just make sure you save your scene with the rig in it, and then that way the data will be stored in the rig. Okay, so let's talk about some of the functionality that's in here. So we have, let's talk about the stuff at the bottom because this is pretty straightforward and quick to go through. If I'm posing my character, let's say I've put the arm up and bend here, and the thing I'm gonna do is just curl all my fingers like this. Okay, so we have just a couple little quick settings we've changed. And if I hit reset transforms, that if nothing is selected, it will do it on the entire rig. If I have something selected, just say only the elbow, it will know to just do it to that one. You can reset all the channels, which is different. So transforms is like your translate, rotate, scales. Channels is all that stuff, like what I just did, the curls and stuff. Now I'll reset all that, and I can reset transforms, and that just puts everything kind of back as it is. You can also copy channels from one control to another. So we'll do that with, yeah, so let's copy the channels here. So I'm going to go in and say, rotate my elbow here. And I'd like to apply that same rotation to, let's do it to the shoulder. So this has multiple axes. So I rotate my shoulder like this. I can then say copy channels, grab the wrist and paste channels. So now it'll have the exact same values on both, which might be good if you have like a character with, 4 arms, 2 on each side. You can copy the values from one arm to the other. And then we have the posing for mirroring and left to right. So let's say I have my character's arms, kind of like this. Let's turn off my mesh selection here. I'm doing like a little funky little dance. Okay, and what I could do is mirror my whole pose. And this is batchable. So you'll see this on a few things. We'll talk about this in a second, but I'll just mirror my pose. Now I just had that one thing selected. So if I want to keep my selection, I can shift click on mirror pose and that will do everything. Or again, if I don't have anything selected in mirror, it'll do everything as well. And we have, I can say right pose to left. So click that and there. So now it's that, and I could do left to right, for example. Now, the batchable means that you can do it instead of a single frame, you could do something over a time range. So let's say you had a character, you create an animation for a game where a character is punching with the right hand. And now you need that same animation with a left hand, so you can do that. And we'll look at a couple examples of batching, but not with the mirroring poses. We'll just keep trucking along here. So that's basically what all this stuff down here does. Then you have functionality on the buttons, depending on what kind of button you right click on. So for example, if I click on, say, this one, I can delete the keys, copy values, pretty basic. Something like the finger, because it has controls on both sides, if I click select paired control, it will select the other side. And if I shift click on it, select paired control, it'll select both sides. So select that one, and if I shift and click, it'll select the other side. I can also right click and I can say select module controls. So that will select all of that module. And I could do the same thing with the arm. So I could right click here and say select module controls. So I can key them or reset them or do whatever I want to do. And then also with the arm, if I right click on any of the arm buttons, I can tell it to do a match. So let's right click on, say, the elbow. So I can say match IK controls to my FK. So I'm going to tell my IK to match this FK pose. And there we go. And you'll notice that it, matched it perfectly, all good. So if we have something keyframed, so let's just say I'm going to set a key on this one here, and then on frame 10, I'm going to move it down to there. So there's my fantastic IK animation that I've created. And I want to batch this to FK. So all I have to do is, again, it's set to single frame, so I'll only do the one pose if I switch it, but I can either do the timeline, which will do all the frames and bake everything, or I can set a range. So in this case, I just want to do the first 10 frames. So I can say frames 1 to 10. And then I will right click on any of these and I can say match FK controls to IK. So it'll take the FK controls and match them to everything that the IK is doing over that time range. So go ahead and do that, match FK to IK. There we go. And so now I'm in FK mode with the exact same animation. And some controls have different settings. So for example, here I have my clavicle. Let's do the other side actually. So I can go in and rotate my clavicle up. And I'm going to keyframe this. Actually, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set my shoulder to follow my spine top. So the difference is with follow clavicle, you can see if I rotate that, the arm goes up. And if I have this set to follow spine top, now when I rotate the clavicle, the arm stays in that position. So let's key the clavicle for 10 frames, like that. And what I'd like to do is have this be set to clavicle, but not have it change, right? So if I'm up here and I change this to clavicle, you can see that it pops, and I don't want that to happen. So what I can do is go to my first frame and right click on my arm shoulder, and I could say follow clavicle and batch that. And I still have it set to frames 1 to 10. So let's go ahead and batch to follow the clavicle, and you'll see that that will then switch. Give that a second to run. There we go. And now you can see that it's following the clavicle instead. So that means that, yes, it's still moving the way it was before, but now if I rotate the clavicle, it's following it. So I could do some stuff like that. And then another thing that I didn't mention with editing is you can actually, like when you're clicking and dragging, you can kind of get the things you want, but sometimes it may be like tricky to get in there and get your click and drag happening. So another thing you could do is I'm going to switch back to edit mode here. Let's say I wanted to make it so that I could select just the pinky easier and only the pinky. And right now, if I'm in my select mode and I right click, I can say, select module controls, but that will select the whole pinky, or sorry, the whole hand and not just the pinky. So what I can do is I'm going to toggle back to edit. I can highlight these. I can actually assign a new color to them. So I can choose recolor button. And I'll just throw on some other random color that's different from anything else that I have in here, and I'll hit OK. And now I'll switch back to my select mode, and I can still right click here and say select module controls, and that will select all of them. But I can also right click and say select same colored controls, and that will grab any control that has the same color. So this way you can kind of create your own custom grouping based on the colors that you assign. And I could do the same thing over on this side. Let's toggle here, and maybe we assign that same color. So I'll right click here and I'll say recolor, and I believe I chose this color. Problem with being colorblind. Huh. Okay, let's actually what I'll do is I'll just grab all these and all of these. Actually, yeah, I guess click drag. Okay, let's just do like this. Hopefully I get it close. If not, you get the idea. This one, I'm a rigger and not a texture artist. So we're gonna um, recolor, and I think I chose this one. Okay, so let's try. See if I know my colors well enough. Okay, so we're gonna go select same colored controls. And there we go. So we got both pinkies there. So you can kind of create these associations through colors. You can also, again, use like your different um, tabs, and you can create as many of these as you like to also make it easier to select certain ones. So for example, I could create another tab for my hands and then have those to kind of work with. And I'm just going to switch this back to sync to there. And then just going to grab some of this stuff in the face and drag it up. There we go. Move these down. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of the UI here. There'll be more features to come, more improvements being made, bug fixes, all this stuff. But now's a great time if you're working with this and you have issues or suggestions to make it better. Hey, I'm all ears. I'm looking to make this as good as I possibly can. But I think it's a big improvement from our RM2's like sort of grid-like structure where you can lay this out however you like. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you find this useful.